Hello, in this video, we are going to talk about structs, more structs. Um, we are talking about a larger program where you read from a file into a struct. Okay, so here's how my text file looks. Text file has two columns of data separated by space. The first one is a model number, and the next one is a bin number. It's for an inventory program. Okay, so model number and bin number. So we're going to use char arrays for both of these. So we need essentially our struct is going to be having two char arrays, right? One for the model number, one for the bin number. And we could have multiple lines. So here's how we start out by doing the data modeling. I'm going to change this. This was done in 2014, but I modified that. And let's say March 26. Okay, so we have a model number. This is not an example for any, it is an example for an assignment, but that's okay. So a model number and a bin number for an inventory database. And I don't need strings because I'm not using strings, but I'm using file stream and manipulators. We have a capacity of 100. Let's change that to 20 for our arrays. And this is a max car for our char arrays. Okay, so here's my struct. Two char arrays, model number and bin number with max car. Okay, and then we go and write all our functions. By now you're familiar with functions, arrays, and all of that. Char arrays, we're going to use all of those things. We write a file to open, we write a function to open the file. Takes a file stream variable by reference. Then we write a function to display the menu. It's going to be a menu-driven program. We read the input, so it should just flow, right? Execute command takes that input and takes the array of structs and the size, which is the number of elements in the struct, right? So what we do is we take it from here and load it into an array of structs, which is what this is. So my struct is called inventory type. So there is a data type, and storeroom is the name of the array, and size will keep track of the number of elements I have in this. So it should be flexible. So if I have like 500 lines in here, your program should be able to read it and load it. So I don't want you to go in here and count the number of lines. It doesn't work that way, right? Okay, then we have read data, which actually reads from the file into this array and returns the number of elements it has read. That's the int that is returning, the count of the number of elements that it's reading from the file. Then I have two search functions. This will help you figure out how to search through character arrays. And then an output data, which outputs, just prints from the array. And notice every time we send something to the function, we send the array and the size that goes with it. Okay. All right, so let's start with the functions. Open file. Let's go to the open file function. It takes this file stream variable, which is created in main. I created it in main. I send it to the open file function. In open file, we essentially read it. We read a file name from the user, so they can type in a file name. You use the cin.get syntax, and if you use the cin.get syntax, you must use the cin.ignore. So you ignore that new line in the buffer. Then you open the file. If the file doesn't open, you say file did not open, and you quit the program. If the file opens, it's not going to go into this if, it's going to come right back here to main. And then we call the read data function. So the file stream variable has been linked to the file. We send that and the name of the array, which I created here with a capacity of 20 elements, which is what I said. So I send both of them to my function called read data, which is going to go into a while loop, read from the file, put it into this array, keep count of the number of items that it's reading, just an integer, returns that, that goes into size. My size has been initialized to 0 here. So when this is done, my size ideally should have the number of lines I have in here, which is 5 right now. So let's jump to that function, read data, which gets done right in the beginning of the program. Okay, notice it's not done in a while loop. The first thing we do is we load the data from the file. So file stream variable comes in by reference. Here comes the array. Size gets initialized to 0. This is a local variable size, which is going to get returned. This has nothing to do with the size in main, by the way. This is a local variable. While not end of file, the data is separated by space. So you simply use your extraction operator and you can read your char array just like that. You don't have to use getLine at this point in time. You read your char array, and the next one is another char array. Size is my subscript. Size starts at 0. Every time I add an element, I increment size. So when the while loop is done, size should have 5 elements. Size should be at 5. So we return size. Comes back here, goes into my variable size in main from the function. And then we turn around and send that to output data, the array and the count. Output data will simply go through a for loop and print it. I set some formatting options, right? That's it. Then I go into a do while loop. Once the initial setup is done, in main, we go to a do while loop, which is ideal for displaying menu items. Display the menu, which simply prints out the menu. That's all it does. The void function takes nothing, returns nothing. Call the read input function after that, which returns an option, and I have declared option as a char variable. So that means read input must be returning a char variable. So I declare a local option. Again, this is local. I read, because I've already output the menu, I just read from the user. I ignore the new line, because scene.get always leaves the new line in the buffer. Ignore the new line. I return option, whatever the user has entered. Comes back here, goes into option. So maybe the user entered M for model number, search by model number, right? M is to search by model, B is to search by bin number, and you can do other things in here. You can do lots of things, which you will be learning in 162. So then we turn around and send that option, which is that whatever character they entered, the array and its size to execute command. Execute command takes over from there. Its job is to essentially switch these options. And if it is M, it calls a function search by model and it sends this array and size to it. If it is B, it searches by bin and it calls that function. If it is Q, we quit. And this is redundant because we are never going to get here. And if it is anything else, we say illegal input. That means it does data validation for us there. So let's look at search by model, how to search in a char array for partial strings or exact strings. Now search by model, model is this first column. I want to search by partial strings, okay? Just for demonstration purposes, you can search by partial string for this column as well. But I wanted to show you how to do both. So I've done partial string for the model. So if you look here, partial string comparison is string string. You declare a local search string variable, set a Boolean variable, tell the user enter model number to search for. You see that get line automatically ignores the new line. Notice I'm not doing a scene.ignore after that. Scene.get line automatically ignores the new line. Read what they enter into search string. Go through the whole array. So the for loop goes through the whole array. You have a list of items. When you want to search, you have to go through the whole array, right? Go through the array. If this is a function that takes one array, the second array, compares the two, and says not equal to null, says if it returns a null, that means it didn't find anything. When we say if it is not equal to null, that means if the return is not equal to null, that means it found something. Then I want you to output it. That's what that's saying. It essentially returns a pointer to something that exists, or if nothing exists, it's going to return a null pointer. So you output the value, you set your found variable to be true, and we'll see why we're doing this, and you break out of there. So it only finds the first item in the list. It's not going to find all the items for your searches. If you want to find all the items, then don't do a break. Okay? We come out of the for loop, and if this found flag has been still set to false, not found, that means if it is set to false, that means we didn't find anything, right? If we had found something in the for loop, it would be set to true. That's what that if is doing anyway. So if it is still set to false, that means we didn't find anything, and it would say model not found. If it is set to true, then we've already output the information here. It's not going to say anything. Okay, so that's kind of how that function is written. The search by bin is exactly the same way, very similar, I should say. reads the bin to search for into a similar local variable. We call it search string, right? It's the same thing as a local char array. Have the same local Boolean variable. Enter bin number to search for, read it. Again, use get line. Then you don't have to worry about the new line. Then you go through a for loop for I equals 0, I less than size, the same kind of a for loop because we are searching through the whole thing. String compare of this string to this string equals 0 means if you find an exact match, output the values, set the Boolean variable to true, and break out of there. Then the same logic. And so we were at execute command, and those are the two functions. That's it. And then you quit, the program ends, and the do while simply says keep outputting the menu every time. If the program doesn't quit, it's going to come here. It's going to check if option is not equal to quit. It's going to go back, display the menu, and keep repeating. Okay, so that's everything put together for a bigger, larger struct program.